What's going on, everyone? My name is Jonathan, the host of the Venue RX podcast, and today I interview Leib.
You're listening to the Venue RX podcast, where we provide your weekly prescription of tips, tools, tactics, and inspiration to start or grow your wedding and events business. And now, without further ado, our host, Jonathan Aymin.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Jonathan. I'm the host here at the Venue RX podcast. Today, we are so excited to interview Leib. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so I am so excited to talk with you and hear a bit of your story. I know we've worked together at different points, and I have seen you recently just go so hard on social media and be putting out so much amazing content. And that's inspiring to me. And so I was excited to be able to get you on the show. And thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
I want to ask you a bit about your story, how you got into photography, how you have been doing during this whole time. Obviously, this is completely strange for our industry, but take me back before we get into all of that. Okay. And I ask you about your the photography stuff that you do. Take me back. Who is I don't know, as far back as you want to go. College, maybe high school.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's pretty funny. I didn't really come from, my family is entrepreneurs all the way, but nobody in my family is really on the artistic side. And I always knew that I wanted to do something in art, but didn't really know what medium was for me. So before I went to art school, my parents really pushed a business degree. So first I got my degree in business management, and then I decided to go to school for interior and architectural design. And somewhere along that journey, I ended up finding my passion in photography, specifically weddings. Okay. And it's kind of a long story, but it doesn't really make sense. And here I am, and really happy that I'm here. I think I really got into photography when I had my daughter, and in order to kind of be in design, it would have been a lot in LA, and it just wasn't really kind of feeding me with client connections and things like that. So, friends started to get married, and one thing turned into another, and here we are.
Was there a point that you picked up the camera and you said, oh, this is kind of cool, and you messed around with it? Was there that kind of intro period, or did you said, I want to be a wedding photographer, and you kind of just started studying?
No. So I kind of started playing with a camera, to photograph my daughter, and a little bit, of things like that before. I had messed with photography, but not really that much. And when I first started, I kind of, got into everything, and I kind of quickly learned that couples and weddings were my favorite. Families were fun, photographing kids was fun, but it wasn't the same. Weddings are kind of really unique and different. And I just felt like that was where I really clicked.
Got it. Makes total sense. So when you did your first wedding, were you super nervous, or was it kind of like a friend had you do it? And so it was a little bit more relaxed. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was, I was actually I must have been 6 months pregnant with my daughter. Okay. And it was a good friend that I'd grown up with, and she'd asked me to do her wedding. And I showed up with a clipboard of every shot that I knew that I needed, because I was so stressed out about it. And made sure that I went down this list and got everything. And it's definitely different now, but it's funny to think about.
That's so awesome. I feel like you probably totally killed it versus someone else who's just I'm just going to wing this. Definitely I can tell attention to detail, and something I can see definitely echoes through your work, because your work, for anyone listening to this on the podcast, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to have to check out Allie's stuff. We're going to put links to all that in the description, as well as she'll shout it out at the end. But I wanted to ask you, in your opinion,
yes,
the big question, obviously COVID has impacted our industry in completely just absolutely nuts ways. I mean, this industry is kind of sort of recession proof, and I've been talking to different guests who have been on here. This is not a recession we're in. It's a pandemic, and it really stands for everything that weddings and events are not about. So in your opinion, what should vendors be doing, photographers be doing? How should they be spending their time right now?
It's so hard. My heart goes out to the vendors a lot. You have to keep trying to grow right now, because eventually this is going to be over. And, with all of the weddings that were postponed and pushed back, that's portfolio work for next year. So I've been really, taking more on my plate and pushing myself to do styled shoots and do things where I'm continuing to grow my craft, continuing to price position myself so that when we come out of this, my growth still makes sense and I didn't stay stagnant and continue to evolve and kind of also be really resilient with how packages and things change. That's like a whole other side of it. But, weddings are changing. Some are the same, some will come back, but you have to continue to kind of grow with what's happening right now and still creatively feed yourself too.
Mm-hmm. How are you doing that? And actually, I want to ask before we even get there, was there an emotional part of this where you started realizing, oh my gosh, I'm getting quite a few cancellations? Because I remember back in March for our business, it was like a couple people canceled for April, and you were kind of like, oh, it's going to be fine. And then like end of March, April, it was like, oh shit, like
yeah. I mean, I'll cry. It's like super emotional. What's hard is, we've moved 73 weddings to next year. And some of those people we've moved 4-5 times. And our heart has broken with them. And the way that we've, tried to like tread that water and handle that then back in March and April is kind of different than how we're handling it now. Because at first, when you're moving a few of them, it's like, okay, I can pull those to 2021. That's fine. Now taking all of our 2020 income into 2021, but still needing new bookings, that's been really challenging. Mm-hmm. Really challenging.
Just anecdotally, do you see a lot of wedding photographers, people who are in the industry with you? Do you see them kind of staying and sticking with what they're doing? Do you see kind of a bit of an exodus with some of the vendors? What's kind of your experience there?
I think photographers, we don't have like the venue overhead and things like that. So I think it's a little bit easier in that sense for us to kind of adapt. I've had conversations with a lot of close photographer friends of mine of like, what are we going to do? We can pivot to other sessions, things like that. But on the financial side, it's not the same to support you as a wedding would be. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm seeing a lot more venues, vendors close, photographers, maybe a few, a lot of them moving out of state. It's challenging.
I've definitely seen photographers who normally would be kind of in this area or the Southern California area who are now, shooting in Arizona or maybe Texas or Nevada, places, because in California, we've had a very dramatically different experience, I think, with the different lockdowns than we've had that there be other places in the country. When you first got involved, how long have you been a photographer?
So like professionally focused in weddings, 6 years.
Okay. So during the past 6 years that you had, I feel like we started our businesses kind of similar timing, 2015.
Yeah.
That's when we started as well. And we kind of saw some pretty consistent growth over that 6-year period, right?
Yeah.
And 2020 was going to be this amazing year. And then it was like, no.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think is going to be an essential thing for any new photographer coming in the industry to know? Because this is not, certainly there are plenty of people who in the 2008, 2009 kind of economic crisis that we had, there are people who got laid off, who got fired, whatever, and then pivoted into a creative industry. For anyone thinking about that now, what do you think are some important things for them to know as they kind of are picking up their camera for the first time?
Yeah. God, there's so many factors in that question. Honestly, build your portfolio. Keep pushing. Yeah, I think that it's really hard for a lot of people to market and, put that financial investment out right now. But Instagram really does wonders. Posting consistently, especially as a photographer, I work really hard on my Instagram to make sure it's very cohesive in my color patterns and all of these things. So everything looks really seamless, or I try really hard. And that's free. That's something you can do that's free. And people look at that as like a living portfolio. And so even if you don't have a lot of real work right now, just kind of really honing in and focusing on like, what is your brand? Who are you? Use this as a developmental time to build, a relationship with your audience, to kind of see who is following you and how you can be creative and continue to reach them on these free avenues.
Totally. And that's actually something that I've admired so much about you and what I've seen from all the content that you've been pushing out, where I've seen other people kind of pull back a little bit more, I think. Really seeing you push in when you have all of the things that you're dealing with, being a mother, shooting maybe the micro weddings or some of the smaller things that are, that you're working on right now, plus posting. How do you find time? Do you delegate some of the social media stuff? Like, how do you make that happen practically?
I'm the worst delegator. That is something I really need to work on. There's ebbs and flows of things, and it's been hard with managing a lot of these bride change phone calls, because that requires a lot of time, energy, empathy, compassion, resiliency, all these things. But I am a big believer in like Instagram scheduling. So I will kind of block out days to go on, load all of my content, sort it out, schedule it, and kind of map, what's coming. And it's all about momentum on Instagram. If I've found that if I go quiet for like a few days, things just fall off, inquiries fall off. You don't hear anything, likes go way down, etc. So finding time for that is something that I do really prioritize. Sometimes, it's 1 a.m. when my child is sleeping and it's just quiet in the house, or, sometimes it's during the day and kind of getting as much in as I can. I like to kind of plan like a month out and have that dialed.
Got it. That's incredible. And I feel like actually scheduling that time and then sticking to it is totally different. I know I'm just speaking personally here. It's so easy. You like block the time, like, oh, I'm going to do it then. And then stuff comes up, life comes up.
Totally.
Like it's too late or whatever. So kudos to you for, even at 1 a.m. when your child's sleeping.
Thank you. All the coffee. Sometimes, it's only like a few days in a row, but I really try. And that's kind of pushed me to keep doing style shoots and like continually think on like trends that are coming. Where does my content need to be? And just pushing in that sense.
So I want to ask you about, you mentioned being a mother and your child sleeping and 1 a.m. How do you juggle being a mom and, taking time for your family with your professional schedule? Because obviously, you spend a lot of time working on your work, on what you're passionate about, but then you want to have that balance. How do you make that happen? And I just want to add something to that. I think a lot of people who may be listening who always thought that they'd love to be a photographer, or they're thinking of kind of doing something else, they might have in their mind a bit of an excuse, like, oh, I have a child or a couple of children, or my family doesn't live nearby, or, some of those different things. What would you say to that?
So I'm a single mom and it is all on me. And that's a blessing, because I would not be motivated the way that I am if that wasn't the case. So for me, there isn't another stream of income. There isn't anything if this fails, and pivoting and just really pushing has been the only thing that has gotten me this far. I have an amazing family. My parents are super close. I do not know what I would do without them. I think it takes a village when you have kids. And I just put her in Christian school, which has been like a game changer, because she can be back at school, which is what she needs and what I need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Did you find early on that you struggled with balancing your time between the two, or was it kind of an easy transition?
No, it's still a struggle. Like between motherhood and work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's, especially with how long the kids are home, that's been really hard, because once I kind of get into a flow, you can kind of balance that. But once things, go a little heavier on one side, you're constantly just darting around, nothing's getting done. So when I'm in a flow, it's good. A lot of the times, she's number one. So when something comes up, everything just kind of has to change. But you find the time.
Mm-hmm. I know we have 4 now. I don't know how that happened. And it's definitely crazy because, there's so many projects and so many different things that both my wife and I are excited about, but at the same time, the kids are home. Unfortunately, we actually are still sending them to school up in Temecula. So they're up there, but it's still like when they're home, they're running around, there are projects that still need to be finished. And so it's like, how do you juggle that time? Have you found anything that you could share with everyone that's kind of helped you, I want to say, have more patience, because it's a total emotional battle, call it, right?
Yes.
Do you have anything that you've done that like helps you kind of not completely lose it? I mean, I know I struggle with that.
So like besides wine, no, I'm kidding.
But let's be honest.
Let's be honest.
Wine consumption has gone way up.
Yeah, a lot. But we're supporting local wineries, so it's good.
Exactly. Win-win.
I just try and roll with it and take a deep breath and remember that I have one. Like, kudos to you. I don't know how you guys do it. I would love to have a house full, but for us, it's just her and I. So I try and I make a list, I time block. And once I can kind of see everything that's on that page, I can then reprioritize so that what she needs first, I can handle. And that just changes. I feel like you just got to fly with it as the day goes.
That's so true. But then having that schedule in the beginning, and then it sounds like being flexible enough to just, once you get off track or off the exact schedule, to kind of just say, it's okay, we're going to keep going.
And that's constant, that's like that constant reminder that just like wedding timelines, things are fluid. You kind of build the timeline. If something runs behind, you kind of shimmy around and you plan enough that you'll get there. So typically what's really helped me this year is I will make a really big list. I will throw everything out on paper, typically right before I go to bed, so that when I wake up in the morning, I can see everything that's really stressing me out and kind of prioritize. Okay, these ones, have to be done today. This one can get done tomorrow. And breaking it down from that has helped me breathe a lot and kind of have more of a perspective on how much time I'm actually going to need.
Got it. So it sounds like a lot of that organization and writing things down from the beginning of your career has really kind of transitioned through.
Yeah, it's a little different now. I never thought of it that way.
That's awesome. Well, this podcast is called The Venue RX, and we certainly talk to wedding vendors in general, but we definitely have a focus on venues. And so of the venues that you've worked at, I'm not going to ask you to play favorites, but I do want to know, for all those venue owners out there who may be listening, are there some things that you feel like the venue can do to make it easier on the photographer?
So things that venues can do to make things easier for photographers. I mean, I think that I always approach wedding day as like, we're all a team, whether or not we work together every weekend or not. That day we're a team. And so open communication and kind of really understanding, what the venue's limits, rules, things like that are, what they need, and also vice versa. I've always been a photographer, both my business partner, Eric, and I, that we want to share those images with you. We want you to have those things. We want to make this good for the venue as well. But that communication before is also really important, if that makes sense.
Totally, 100%. So talk to me about that communication. Do you like walkthroughs? Do you feel like, you're able to kind of like, would a video, if a venue provided kind of like a virtual tour showing you the space, you can kind of have an idea of where your shots are going to be?
Not so much that. I'd say that, some venues, as like will have their own in-house coordinator. That coordinator, and I'll kind of, guide my couples through this. That coordinator will have a schedule. I kind of need some of these pieces to then build a photography schedule. And there's certain things like sunset lighting that within that coordinator timeline, we need to make sure that if the couple wants to pop out for 15 minutes for those golden glow photos, that's not like right in the middle of formalities and things like that. So those little things make the day a lot smoother and kind of, understanding, how early we can be on site. Typically, I don't, need to do a full walkthrough or something. I kind of will always get there early day of if it's somewhere I haven't shot, and just kind of, create like that relationship between each other where they know I'm there for the couple, but I'm also like happy to share and be here for you too.
Got it. I have a question about that, and just about photography in general when you're there working with other vendors, specifically videographers. So a lot of times you're trying to capture the same stuff.
Yes.
Is there a secret feud that goes on between photographers and videographers?
Everybody asks this question. Like, I'll have couples that are like, I'm so sorry, but we did end up getting video. And I'm like, that's good. You should have video. Photos are beautiful, but they're not video. It's personality traits. You're dealing with a lot of creatives who are visualizing shots before they happen and things like that. Again, we have to be a team. So typically we always reach out to video before, let's work together. You tell me what you need. I really like working with most videographers because I like movement in my photos. So when they do those things, I can still get my stills. I think there's a few that are a little more challenging and more structured, but you got to be on the same page. Our end result is the same, whether we're delivering video, photo, etc. I could say I've had great experiences with video.
I feel like that's a very gracious response. I do have a question about getting your shot. So yeah. I've seen different videographers and different photographers at different stages in their careers just over the time that we've been working in the event space. And does it take a certain level of boldness, or was there a point that you kind of had to get over the fact that you're going to be walking in front of everyone, or kind of putting yourself in a very, like, you're front and center because you're trying to capture that moment right there?
Yeah. I mean, I think that conversation still plays in my head before every wedding. I'm a very introverted extrovert. I need to recharge, but once especially with work, I kind of will flip the switch and can be very on. I am 4'11". I kind of need to make myself known when I'm there, especially when it's, getting family photos, those couple photos. You can't not be assertive. You have to step into those situations. During ceremony, when it comes to, through walking through people and stuff like that, that doesn't really bother me as much anymore. But in the beginning, I think a lot. It is a little nerve-wracking, but you have to know what you need, and that takes priority to all of that backseat emotion.
Got it. So was there, did anyone ever encourage you to do that? Like, was there, because I imagine maybe the first couple weddings, were you a bit more shy?
Yes and no, probably. I might have felt, not as confident in my capability or gear or things like that. But I think at the end of the day, you're giving someone their wedding photos. So if you need to get that shot, you do. I do try and, use certain lenses to where during intimate moments in the ceremony and things like that, I don't have to get as close, that I can kind of do that more from a distance because I don't want to be distracting. So it's kind of a fine line to walk.
Totally. Speaking of lenses and gear, we'd kind of be sad if we didn't talk about the gear. Are you Sony, Nikon, Canon? What? I
feel like a dying breed. I'm a Nikon girl. Most girls on my team are Canon.
Okay.
But I really love the Sigma art lenses. I feel like I just started with Nikon. I know that thing like the back of my hand, and even when I've gotten newer models and things like that, to switch over to something else and not be able to, know exactly what I'm doing without stopping and looking and making sure, that scares me.
Totally. We have a little media team here. We just do video and live streaming. But we went heavy mirrorless very early on. So of course it was like Sony, because Sony was really the only option at the time. And then of course Canon's come out with the M50 and some of the other models that are now, mirrorless Canons. But we've been a Sony team, and I've heard quite a few photographers do shoot on Nikon.
Yeah.
Which models do you have?
I have the 750.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, got two of those, and I could upgrade, but I really like it because it's a lot lighter than the next body model. So my wrist will really start to kill at the end of the day. And that little bit of weight difference, I feel like makes a big difference for me.
Absolutely. I know our video team, they, if they're shooting a long day, one of our guys, when you have the gimbal and then you have the camera and a lot of those rigs, you start adding things to make it more capable. And then before you know it, you're walking around with 10 pounds, and killing you. And I imagine, especially being pretty tiny, every little bit definitely does make a big difference.
When you're holding that stuff for like 8-10 hours a day, it's like my shoulder, my arm is like pretty done at the end of the day. But
when you finish shooting, is that when, do you feel like it's over at that point? Or is there like this whole other section that's harder? Kind of talk me through the workflow a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think a lot of couples see, and you guys can probably relate on the venue side, like that it's day of service, but there's so much that goes in before. The wedding is one part of it, but all of our editing starts after, and calling through, 4,000 images down to 1,700, whatever it is, that is when the real work starts.
I feel like it's almost the opposite of what we do on the venue side, because so much prep work, 12, 18, 24 months prior. Now you get to the wedding. The wedding, if we've done our jobs right, is almost over. Just from the vendor side. With you, it's the other way around.
Yes.
You've thought through it all, of course, planned everything out, then you shoot it, but then you have a bunch of work.
Yes.
Is there a specific timeline that you like to hold yourself to as far as getting the photos back to your couples?
Yes, I aim for 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
I tell them 9 to 12. And this year that's been a little harder, especially as you like wrap like October and like these like really, busy season months, and Christmas and all of that. But editing is the number one thing that can really pile up. And if you don't have a good workflow for that and you let that just kind of stockpile, it gets real serious real quick.
Yep.
So typically after a wedding, I come back, I, load my memory cards, I back them up, I get everything kind of dialed like before I sleep. And then within the first week or so, I will always send out like a highlight gallery of, about 80 to 100 images to kind of like hold them over.
Awesome. So those are probably some of the photos that on the venue side we receive, or some of the other vendors that are like sneak peeks.
Yes.
Do you kind of have an idea beforehand of photos that you're taking, or maybe a wedding that you're taking that you want to try to get published? Or is that something that happens after?
It can be both. I mean, you could kind of be in a moment and think, okay, I really am liking this. But typically, I'd say it's probably in post where you kind of really see the full story come together, especially when you're working for or looking for publications. You need kind of a lot more content. And pulling all of that together.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. Well, I want to transition to the part of the show we call the wedding wheel. And how the wedding wheel goes, we've got this little fun spinning wheel over here. And so we spin the wheel. Allie is going to then answer the question, but she's going to have a couple minutes to think about her answer. So we're going to spin this here in just a second. Then we're going to get into our left at the altar section and the daily prescription. And then we'll come back for her answer. So let's give this. All right. Where is a location that inspires creativity for you?
Okay.
So that is today's wedding wheel question, a location that inspires creativity for you. We're going to get back to that here in just a second, but the next section is the left of the altar section. This is a segment of the show where you share with us maybe a mistake or a little oopsie you had, or a learning experience or something like that maybe can help our listeners not make a similar mistake, perhaps.
Oh God, it's scary. What am I comfortable sharing? No.
I know, right? It's a tricky question. You're like,
it is. Never format a memory card until you are 100% sure that you are good.
I was going to ask about that. Have you ever had times where you've like either written over files or accidentally deleted something that you needed?
So like knock on all of the wood and everything. I've been really fortunate on my end, but let's say at the end of the night, my, assistant second shooter gives me their card. I get home, I load my card. Well, that takes, 6 hours or so. I go to bed, load her card in the morning. Might have, forgotten about that one amidst mom duties and other things.
Yep.
Might have then formatted it. which is why everyone on my team is required to shoot in 2 card slots and hold their card until we know that everything is good. Because that is like, I have anxiety just thinking about that. Nobody wants to have to make that call.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really cool bit of the daily prescription as well for any photographers who are out there who are, maybe on their first or second wedding, double filming on both.
Oh, that is a must for me. Like, we've got a good group of girls that assist with us. And if you don't have 2 card slots, it can't happen because something could happen day of. One of those cards could go bad. That happens. So yes, 2 cards always.
I have a question. This is, kind of outside of the format here, but it is just what makes a good photographer? Like, maybe quality of shots or the quality of gear they're using, but what, in your opinion, maybe you look at someone's Instagram as you're looking for someone to work with you. At what point are you like, wow, oh my goodness, they are incredible? Is it a mood thing? Is it an editing thing later? Is it getting the shot?
That's a great question. There's so many amazing photographers, and I don't think that answer is the same for everybody. A really good friend of mine that's, one of my best friends and mentors, she's always told me that it doesn't, this is such a saturated market. And so what I've struggled with that I also am continually trying to push through, like with things like today, is you can have the best gear. You can be super knowledgeable about what you're doing. You could handle posing like a boss. You can, all of those things. But there's a part of yourself that makes that connection with your audience, your clients, your people, and nobody else can have that. That is unique to you. And when you establish that, I think that is what makes a good photographer, that relationship. Because at the end of the day, anybody can have the gear, anybody can have the education, but it's, that creative aspect with getting to know your audience, your couples, your brand, and kind of being open enough to share yourself, because really the people looking to hire you, they want to know you.
Oh, and do you feel like that makes a difference in the way that people portray themselves in photos? Because there's certainly maybe a comfortability level that you have to get to.
Yes, 100%. So I include engagement sessions in all my packages. And a lot of photographers are like, that's crazy. You shouldn't be doing that. Here's why. I hate being in front of the camera more than anybody. 90% of my couples will tell me like, we're so awkward. We hate this, da, da, da. You do so many weddings a year. You want to keep that passion for what you do. And the way that I've found to do that is by making an effort to get to know what makes my couple unique and making that the game. There's timeless poses, there's things that will work on everybody. But when you take time to, be aware of somebody's insecurities, be aware of how they see themselves in front of the camera, and you build this rapport with them before their wedding, the wedding day is easy. They trust you. You know them, you're less anxious as a photographer because you know that you're going to deliver something amazing to them. I don't know. Sorry, I kind of went on my tangent.
No, I love that. I think that's some of the best advice you've given this whole time. Like just taking the time to really understand who your couple is, and people have in their head things that maybe are not even true.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Well, we all see ourselves through our own lens.
Yes.
And so I might see you as this way and say, oh my gosh, you're gorgeous. Like, what are you even worried about? But that's not the question. The question is, what are you insecure about and why? Talk to me about that so I can understand. And so that when I'm posing you, even though I think you're beautiful all the way around, I am aware of that, because at the end of the day, these are your images. You see yourself this way. And we can work through some of that, but I want, a good chunk of that to be what I know you're going to like.
I know a lot of people have been maybe even told different things growing up, like, oh, you should post your left side or to your right side because whatever, or, your eye kind of looks fun. And so they're going to have these things in their head of like, oh my God, I have to be one way or the other. If you didn't do that background work and you wouldn't know that, and all of a sudden you're going to put them in a position where they feel awkward, and that's going to probably be communicated through their body language and stiffness and how they are with their partner.
You can see it like, we kind of have that conversation as we're leading up to the engagement session. And within the first 15 minutes or so, you kind of watch like body language move and shoulders kind of relax. And laughing happen. And that's when, you're setting yourself up for success in that moment. And they kind of realize that the time to take out and do these engagement sessions is really important. Mm-hmm. Because we don't often do photo sessions. It's a very, we should, but it's a lot to get ready for and do all that.
Absolutely. And by the way, I just want to say thank you so much for being on this show. You said you hate being in front of the camera more than ever. This is just all camera. So
yeah, thank you.
You're a rock star for coming on here, but we should go back because I am excited to hear your answer. Where is a location for you that inspires creativity? And it maybe doesn't have to be a physical location, but maybe like, where is it for you that you go mentally or physically that really helps kind of give you that spark, that creative spark where you have energy that you feel like, wow, and you're ready to go again?
Traveling, which has been like really hard this year.
No.
Yeah, well, I love to travel, weekend trips, things like that. I feel like that's when I feel like I can actually disconnect and be present somewhere. And so when I'm home, I'm in work mode and just getting out of the house, whether that's like a day at the beach, whatever. I feel like that's kind of when I like regroup and start thinking about, being inspired of what's next.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So beach is the beach is still, available, accessible to us here in Southern California. I know different beaches have tried to close, but
Yeah, we'll find the ones.
Exactly. Yeah. Huntington, they seem to not have closed anything down ever. That whole area. But anyway, all right. Well, Allie, I appreciate your time. The last part of our show here is the honeymoon phase. And this is a section where, if the audience wants to connect with you, if someone's coming on this show and, maybe they're listening and they're really excited about connecting with you about taking their photos, can you tell us a little bit about specifically, so do you just do weddings? Do you do family photos? I know there's like boudoir, there's all sorts of different, graduation stuff. Tell us a little bit about your business and where people can connect with you.
Yeah. So, I'm on Instagram, Golden Arrow Photo, or online at goldenarrowphoto.com.
Follow this woman. Seriously. I'm not just saying that. Her photos are gorgeous. And I contacted you because you just kept posting all this amazing content. And I'm like, holy crap. Like either the Instagram algorithm was just trying to put us together or something, but I'm like, I've got to talk to Allie. So yeah.
That means so much. I am so inspired by watching you and everything that you post. So thank you. So I do, I mainly market for weddings. That's just kind of like where I'm really happy. I take a lot of other things on. I love doing boudoir. That's a whole other topic of how to market for that I need to learn more about.
I was going to say, speaking of like vulnerability and that comfortability and actually connecting with people, I feel like that is like the most,
Oh, and those sessions are so fun because I've had women who have just completely done them for themselves and taught me so much about confidence that those sessions are really fun. So typically, those are things I do with my brides. Here and there, I kind of will add them on. I do a lot of family stuff for the couples I've already had. I'm always open to doing family stuff. It kind of just comes down to availability.
Totally. So are you pretty booked up? Is it hard to hire you? How can people hire you?
You know how the date game is going right now for next year. We definitely have availability, but next year is pretty packed. We'll see how that goes.
So 2022 is a strong play if people are looking for you.
We're like booking out 2022, which is great. So I'm on the Knot. I think that's where a lot of my couples come through, or like really great vendor referrals and past couple referrals.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, Allie, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're awesome. I hope everyone goes and follows you and checks out your work. And thanks for sharing with us a little bit today. I want to ask you one last thing before we go. Actually, I'm going to say two things.
Okay.
Is there a photographer that you followed that you were just inspired by their work, that you love their work? I mean, it can be something as cliche, dare I say, as like Peter McKinnon, or something very indie. Is there a photographer that is like that you're very impressed with?
Sue Bryce, which is not my style at all, which will like throw people off that do follow me and know who that is. She's an amazing human. And the first year I went to WPPI, the photographer conference, I saw her speak and it literally changed my life. And so I am just in awe of her and who she is as a person and what she creates and what she comes up with. I would love to take time to get into more of those like heavy portrait sessions that she does. She's amazing.
Awesome. That's really cool. I'm going to go look her up now because I'm
Really
curious.
cool. And she's fun to listen to. She's got a really good Australian accent.
That always is the best.
Yeah.
I just did a podcast with Steve Sims the other day, and he has an English or maybe it's Irish accent, and just like I'm captivated the whole time.
You're like, keep talking.
keep going.
Yeah.
But yeah, the last question I had was, is there a tool or a kind of some go-to piece of tech, something that's in your bag, something that's in your, pouch or whatever you are carrying with you? Is there some go-to piece of tech that you use all the time without fail, and you couldn't imagine doing what you do without it?
Like on wedding day or just?
Yeah, on wedding day. Like I know for just editing some of these podcasts, like card readers, fast card readers are important. Like stuff like that. Is there anything that you kind of is like your go-to thing?
I mean, I feel like my camera.
There you go.
I think a lot of like the more things like that I couldn't live with would be on like the post side, like laptop, fast card readers, 100%, and like applications, things like that.
Is there any software, speaking of applications, like software, culling software, anything like that you use that is just like has been a game changer for you?
Honestly, it's the Instagram scheduler. That seems like such a lame thing to say. I edit everything in Lightroom. I cull while I'm editing, and, having an online host like Pixie said to like send galleries, things like that. But I feel like those are really lame answers.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Because a lot of people maybe who are just getting into this, if they're listening to this, the best thing about this content is, as we create it, it's evergreen and it stays there. And then, people, a new photographer who's just shot their first or second wedding and is like, oh my God, like everyone else that I've seen seems so natural. I feel like a little shy or a little nervous. They're going to listen to this and just be like, wow, and get that inspiration. So thank you again, Allie, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Of course. All right, everyone. Well, we will see you in the next episode.